This is the Surly Grognards for November 21st, 2016. This is Peter Bowman, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. How are you doing tonight, Eric?
I'm doing all right.
Excellent, excellent. So, we're gonna be talking. We're gonna be talking about role-playing games this week, like in general. Like,
Yeah, like it's something we haven't done in a while. Weirdly enough, given the nominal basis of the show.
yeah, we're going kind of old school for us. We sort of touched on both these topics at one point or another, but it's been so long that we've talked about them that it seems like a good time to revisit them. And we had a request for it from Darth Elmo. So let me read his little his comment that prompted
Really, the
this.
most terrifying of Sith Lords.
Yes. All right, so Darth Elmo writes, so this might be a little gimmicky for a show topic suggestion, but how about talking about Dungeons and Dragons? Wait, hear me out. So I can't remember you guys ever talking about what makes a good dungeon a good dungeon. For Peter's side, what is your process of making a dungeon, deciding theme, monsters, puzzles, overarching philosophy on dungeons, and anything else you can think of? For Eric, what do you look for in a dungeon as a player? Any particularly memorable ones? Then you can also talk about dragons, their place in fiction, or any favorites as characters. Also, how best to use them in campaigns, clever beasts, sentient dictators, or some other way. If that's enough, you can address the villain archetype of the dragon. And these are both excellent topics.
Yes, these are good ones.
All right, so we'll start off with the dungeon stuff because, dungeons.
Right.
They're
in the title. It's the first thing in the title.
Right, exactly. Honestly, the big thing about dungeons are... I'm trying to think how to put it. I do use dungeons in a lot of RPGs. It varies by game, obviously.
Right.
And almost anything can end up being a dungeon. But when you talk about dungeons in role-playing games, of course everybody's first thought goes to Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
yes,
old school Dungeons and Dragons.
Some sort of forgotten catacombs filled with various... In the old modules, often like nonsensically placed gribblies.
Yes. Oh, some of the really old modules. Well, I mean, yeah, it all goes back to where the origin, where Dungeons and Dragons came from, which was something to do, a different take on what to do with the miniatures and the things the guys had they were using in chainmail. So you have your group of adventurers that you put together that would go down it as a way to go down and explore this dungeon and do stuff and and it's and in many ways for a lot of campaigns, especially for like your early like a group's early games, it's the dungeon is sort of almost the centerpiece of it in a lot of ways. And it's I've found actually with a lot of sort of, especially with fantasy games, it's a great way to shake down a new system.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you learn a lot about them. But the other thing I've found is that almost anything can sort of end up being a dungeon in a weird sort of way. I mean, so what are the defining traits of a dungeon is the big thing. I mean, it's...
Well, there's, you can only go down, like, certain defined paths. There are various puzzles and skill tests along the way, with traps and other such unpleasantness. And there are gribblies, or there are opponents to fight.
Right. I mean, it's limited, a constrained, limited geographic area, enclosed usually.
Not necessarily. I remember someone adapted a dungeon to be an overgrown forest, and you could only move down the game paths because of the
right. But
because it was all brambles and general unpleasantness that
if
you could move into, but you're not going to be very effective in there.
Right. But again, it's a case of effectively being enclosed, not necessarily de facto, but
All the ground's hot lava.
Right. But I mean, like, it could be, your classic, Dungeons and Dragons, a ruin that you explore and it's got like underground caverns and
Right.
stuff, or like an actual cave network, or it could be an abandoned space station or an occupied space station if you're in science fiction. Um,
It could be twisting back alleys of some city or metropolis.
Absolutely.
From whatever genre. There's always a city or metropolis, whatever the genre.
In sewers, I like your sort of dense jungle also.
Mm.
And a wizard's tower, an office building, in like a Shadowrun type thing.
Yeah, Shadowrun's basically. Yeah, Shadowrun's basically running dungeons, only they're in office buildings with security gadgets and security and whatnots instead of, orcs or skeletons.
Right, exactly.
Although sometimes in Shadowrun, sometimes the security goons are in fact orcs.
That's true, actually. Oh my god. So yeah, but so that's sort of the almost anything can end up being a dungeon, and again, it's a great tool for to basically have an to have an enclosed place where the characters.
Computer network.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, for the Decker.
I can't believe we're talking Shadowrun. It took me this long to remember that computer networks could be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is that it's an enclosed area which constrains what options the players have available, which makes it easier for the game master to plan.
Mm.
I mean, you're never going to have it 100% planned because the players are always going to do something you're not expecting.
They're always going to do something ridiculous. They're players. Nothing you plan is going to survive contact with the players.
No,
it's just the way role-playing games work.
Indeed. And so that's it's a classic. But so I find I still use them from time to time, but I actually thinking about it in a weird way. Since I've been the sci-fi game I've been running on with the Thursday crew, I decided to reuse a bit of a plot line that I used with you guys in a sci-fi game.
Okay. Did you send them to the prisoner planet?
Uh-huh.
Ah, okay.
I've expanded a bit.
Did they nope the fuck out?
They haven't yet because they can't.
Right.
See, the problem is not one of them are a scientist.
Oh. So they can't just pull some bullshit out of their ass involving a jukebox and a stereo.
Right. But
There's a copy maker involved in that too. I don't know.
I don't remember.
It was definitely science and several exclamation points after it.
But I've turned an entire solar system into a dungeon. Yeah, they've got lots of freedom to roam about on the surface of the planet and fly around the solar system. But they have no hyperdrive currently.
The planet's its own chamber in the dungeon.
Well, kinda. I mean, the big thing is that they have no FTL drive at the moment.
So they can't nope the fuck out.
Nope.
Well, I suppose they could drive into. I suppose they could slingshot around the sun. I suppose that would work. If Kirk taught me anything, is that slingshotting around the sun will solve all of your problems.
Sure.
That or an overhead hammer blow.
Sure. But anyways, so it's showing you the sort of extent of it, what a dungeon can be. Although, in that, as always, I'm that particular scenario, I'm being fairly flexible of things they can do. The nice thing is I've been able to screw with them a bit more than I did with you guys.
It's because we nope the fuck out.
Yes. Also,
we saw the writing on the wall. Went, no, we're leaving. We are leaving the campaign.
Oh God. The best part is they figured out that they are actually they figured. Wait a minute. Looking around, I'm sort of detecting the cheese or rat poison option here, aren't I? We're rats in a maze right now, aren't we? Not saying anything.
No, no, you're no, yes, your rat's in a maze, but I think it's doing a disservice to the rats, honestly.
Well, yes, yes, but at any rate, but yeah, that's sort of the sort of the crux of the classic sort of what sort of the role the dungeon fills. I mean, there are a lot of different things you can do with that. And again, like it's just a great way to. And it doesn't have to be all about combat either. It's a thing. I mean,
No,
obviously,
absolutely not. There can be a lot of puzzle solving and whatnot involved. Also, we're just using your wits. Doesn't necessarily have to be your a puzzle.
Right, and that's sort of what the prisoner planet is. In question, the we're trapped on a planet by an advanced alien race who are using it to run experiments on us. Fuck.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. I admit I'm a jerk. But yeah, so
well, at least you don't have a bunch of like drugged out weirdos wandering around and blissed out weirdos wandering around and going be seeing you to make things even creepier.
True. But so,
I always was terrified of the rovers in The Prisoner when I was a kid.
Oh, yes, I'm not surprised, and
like just these giant amorphous bouncing balls that would just absorb you into them. Scared the crap out of me, more than the Cybermen.
And there may or may not be one on the planet.
There's obviously one on the planet. You're doing the prisoner theme. There's going to be something like a rover.
There was one with you guys, in the one I did with you guys too.
Yeah, and that made me rope the. That was what made me nope the fuck out.
But as to sort of answering Darth Elmo's question, sort of what my thought process in making a dungeon, deciding theme monster, it depends on the campaign. I try in general with like if I'm doing a class, like a classic Dungeons and Dragons type thing. I try to be more sensical with what monsters and puzzles will be in the dungeon than the classic, some of the old classic modules. I try to have like have
Here's a manticore. Here's a room filled with skeletons. Here's a angry jelly.
Right. I mean, some of that, it does do make like the slimes and such actually make a certain amount of sense just being basically whatever dungeon because of the type.
As does the free roving feral undead.
Right.
Like ghouls or just uncontrolled skeletons and zombies all make perfect sense.
Sure. But I do find that one of my big philosophies for dungeons, honestly, is to make sure that if I'm having a dungeon there, that there's a point to it. There's a reason the player, like, not just like going in and searching for treasure. I mean, although that could be the theme, but usually there's like there's a plan involved, and it's gonna tie into whatever I sort of over. I mean, occasionally I'll like start a campaign off with a dungeon delve just to as a way for the players to shake things out and figure things out about their characters and how they're going to react with each other and how they're going to work together. But on top of that, I try to tie it in a little bit with at least some sort of a story. Right. And I think that's actually really important.
Well, it's yeah, I mean, the dungeon should always be tied into the greater narrative theme, at least, of the game.
Yep, absolutely.
Like, if it's just go into a dungeon looking for treasure, there are easier ways to get treasure. Like, pull a heist. You're skilled adventurers. You can pull a heist on the local bank.
Or go and find a sizable bandit gang and go beat them up and take their treasure.
Yeah.
Go all Lena inverse on them.
Or just decide where are the barons now. These old barons, we killed them. They're dead now. Hell, that could be a dungeon right in there. Infiltrating the baron's keep to steal his treasure and keep.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
You might want to make him a bad baron, though.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Like a villainous one.
Well, it depends.
Unless you're looking to do the whole like amoral revolutionaries thing.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can do. I mean, it depends on the campaign too. But as always, you got to tie it into what the campaign is. The characters is. You got to keep in mind what type of characters you're talking about here.
But
But the other thing about
it's like when I started the old Iron Kingdoms game on Tuesdays.
Yep.
Like the first thing I did was a brief investigation and then a tiny dungeon run in some back alleys.
Yep. I remember that.
Which is largely just a shakedown for you guys to figure out how the hell the system worked.
Yep, and dungeons are great for that.
Yep.
But yeah, like as to the sort of traps and such, those are another classic staple in dungeons. I think the most important thing about when you're designing a dungeon for the player characters, is you need to keep in mind one of two things. You got to make sure that like if the trap is going to involve like in D&D skill checks, have multiple solutions for the traps so that or at least tailor them to the party so that they don't just hit a brick wall and can't deal with it, or they can't move forward. There's nothing more frustrating than coming up to a trap and realizing that, oh, well, none of us have in fourth ed, there's a magical trap and none of us have Arcana, so we don't know how to we can't actually disarm it in any way, shape, or form.
Or some sort of like complex mechanical trap, and the entire party consists of a ranger, 2 barbarians, and a druid.
Right.
It's like, this is not in our bailiwick.
Right. So you got to come up. You have to have some alternate way for dealing with the situation. Not just necessarily a trap, but a puzzle even. Especially with puzzles, honestly. That's I will say there are a lot of sort of ways you can approach handling puzzles in RPGs in general, and especially in dungeons. The first one being, I would recommend not just having one fixed solution, because if you have exactly one solution that only that solution will work, it's entirely possible that the players just won't catch it, even if it's the sort of thing that they should catch.
Even if it seems stupendously obvious, you might just end up with the 3 of them standing around trying to figure out how to get to the helicarrier when there are jetpacks lying in the middle of the street.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Eric.
Not that hasn't happened in this exact show.
Yep. Oh my god. Yeah, even I fall into that trap, as it were, as a game master. Because you might not, as a game master, you might not be able to get it across as clearly as you might think without flatly telling the players. You might give them clues that you think will be obvious to them, and they just might not miss. They might just miss it, or you phrase it wrong, or
someone's obsessed with the idea of driving a dinosaur around.
Right. Oh, there's a lot of
I'm just going to list my sins of missing the obvious this session.
Oh god. But one of the other tricks, I've mentioned this in the show before, but one of my other favorite tricks for puzzles is sort of coming up with a quote puzzle, like basically a thing that's an obstacle, and for the players, and then just let them sort of try to puzzle it out themselves, and then basically just say, okay, I've got a sort of an idea for how I think this puzzle should be handled, but if the players come up with a solution that a solution that sounds like it could theoretically make sense, just go with it, even if it's not the one you intended.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that, and have totally stolen that plan from you a couple times.
Yep.
Largely, I tend to encourage the more outrageous and outlandish plans, like jumping off the cliff, jumping off the bridge into the bandit's boat from 30 feet up with absolutely no plan or safety net. That sounds awesome and hilarious. Go for it.
I mean, there have been more than a few times where I've come up with a puzzle of some sort and just said, I'm not even going to think of a solution. I'm just going to go with the best sounding solution the players come up with, and say, yes, that was the solution to the puzzle.
Yes, that was clearly the plan.
Well done.
Obviously.
Because it's less in those situations. It's less about about actually creating a puzzle you want them to solve. It's you're creating a situation to force them to think creatively and come up with something to come up with a solution, and force them to sort of to think and work together to come up with a solution. That's more I've actually find for puzzles that's the most satisfying sort of answer. I mean,
Yeah.
I admit I have also done puzzle. I've in with the right group, I will often use puzzles that are with the right players. Um,
Right.
I've on more than one occasion had puzzles with one solution that are logic puzzles because I love logic puzzles. I think they're neat and interesting. I enjoy doing them. But with the wrong group of players, oh god, that would be frustrating for them.
Can't I just break it? No, Eric, you can't just break it. Okay, I'm gonna break it anyway.
um, I mean, and I've done that with the Tuesday crew. And
Yep.
with and fortunately, the first time I did that, I discovered that Hannah is actually very good at them.
Yes, Hannah's very good at them. Chris is relatively good at them. I require some bolt of inspiration.
Right. But I threw one in during the Feng Shui game, and Hannah solved it in like 5 minutes at most.
Yep. Yep.
She's like, "Oh, I know how to solve this puzzle." I'm like, "Well, all right then."
Oh, 1 + 1 = 2. Eric, why do you keep insisting it's 3.75? Because I like that number today.
So yeah, that's the sort of thing I would recommend keeping in mind especially with puzzles. But that applies to traps too.
Yes.
But again, my overarching sort of philosophy on dungeons is making sure I actually have a purpose for them. And again, that purpose can be as simple as a way to a way the purpose could actually just be, okay, it's time for a dungeon crawl, just so the players can tromp around a dungeon and beat the crap out of things and deal with traps and solve puzzles.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tie it into the story, but the actual purpose for it is I will set up the dungeon to create those situations.
Yeah, I want to do a dungeon crawl this week. We're doing a dungeon crawl. Here is your dungeon.
Yeah, and there's something, and as much as I love the actual role playing and the interactions and the deep stories you can tell, but there's also something really fun and satisfying about an actual good old fashioned dungeon crawl.
Yes. Especially when they're properly disguised. They're not obviously dungeon crawls.
Oh, yes. I mean, those, especially in this situation, but even when it's obvious that it's like, yes, this is a dungeon crawl.
Yeah, there is something comfortably nostalgic about going through some catacombs or a cave network or a literal dungeon.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's sort of the crux of it. I mean, we could go on about sort of the nitty gritty details, but I don't think they're like nitty gritty sort of fiddly details about designing a dungeon is. I mean, if there's gonna be combat, make sure that the places where you're expecting combat to happen have interesting tactical features about them that make sense in regards to the dungeon.
Yeah. And
it's in regards to the dungeon you're using.
Make sure it's not a cakewalk for the players, but it's a fun challenge. Like,
right.
You don't want to completely screw over the players and make them not able to use any of their tools, but instead find a way to make sure that they use their tools in new and interesting ways.
Yep.
Even if they might grumble about it initially.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I think that needs to be kept in mind is there's a lot of classic sort of thought about sort of like people sort of there's a lot of sort of half mocking sort of about how often in these dungeon things why is it that the weakest defenses are on the outside and the toughest stuff's on the inside? Why would you put really tough defense on the outside, especially if it's it's a lair of someone powerful you're going in to beat up, like an evil lich? Why is the evil lich's toughest body? Why does the evil lich have his weakest troops on the outside? And the answer to that is because from a gameplay standpoint, you want the difficulty of the dungeon to escalate as you go deeper in, as opposed to running to a brick wall and then have it sort of trail off, and then spike up again.
Also, it's a crazy paranoid lich. He's going to keep his most powerful, most trusted troops by his side because he doesn't trust those other fuckers, or they're incompetent mooks. But a good way for us to test them.
But I mean, the logical thing the logical thing would be if you want to make sure that no one's getting in. You keep your toughest, most dangerous guards near you, but you put really tough guards on the outside also to prevent anyone from even getting in. Like, I think logically you put like really powerful guards on the outside, really powerful guards around you, and then fill the rest of the place with traps.
Yes, I mean that's kind of how I would if I were designing a dungeon as an evil overlord.
Right.
Yes, I would have my biggest, toughest, dumbest guys on the outside. Guys are too dumb to be friggin' bribed effectively, but too tiresome to have next to me all the time.
Right. And again, which narratively makes a lot of sense, but it wouldn't make for a very interesting experience. It could make for an interesting experience every now and then, I think. But like that middle part of the dungeon then becomes just this giant slog of, oh god, another trap. Another trap.
It's not fun.
Right. I mean, it can be fun. I mean, with the right group, that'll work brilliantly. As always, most things with the right group will work well. But
I mean, another way to do it, just from an evil overlord thinking, is yes, I have my weedy expendable troops out on the outside where all the really deadly traps are. So if they stumble into them, I'm not losing anything.
Right. No, so there's a lot of things that that you want to do from a gameplay standpoint to make the whole thing a satisfying, fun experience that doesn't feel like a slog. Don't make as much sense narratively, from a narrative standpoint, but again, you don't want to fill the entire place with like millions upon millions of traps because that gets tedious.
Yes.
Like, there's nothing more tedious than the classic, like, honestly, the classic D&D party trope of, okay, we move forward 10 feet and search for traps. We move forward 10 feet and search for traps. We move forward 10 feet and search for traps. It's like, yeah, I understand this is smart and logical, guys, but it's not tedious. It's not interesting, and it's not fun for anybody involved, honestly.
Except for that one guy who's really into the procedure of it.
Right. But like I have had groups, like I dialed way back the number of traps and such I used at one point and even after that, like, it took a while for the groups I would run for. I never was big into using tons of traps, but I used a fair number here and there because traps are neat. Yeah. But even after I dialed it back, because I found the game was exploring dungeons and such was going too slowly and was getting kind of tedious. Like, even after I dialed it back, it was like it took a while for them to realize that I dialed it back, or to trust that I dialed it back intentionally, and wasn't screwing with them.
There's that one game master that everyone ends up playing with at some point, who's just waiting for the one time they don't say, I test for traps.
Right. And that's not me, because I'm not trying to punish my players.
Yeah. You cut out there.
Oh, sorry. Because I'm not trying to punish my players.
Right. Because it's a collaborative effort. It's not it's not a competitive one. It's a collaborative one. And we've all played with the one game master who sees it as a challenge to their supremacy if they're not punishing the players in some way.
Right.
And I don't like playing with that guy. I can't think of a guy like that off the top of my head. But we've all played with him. We all have that memory, and it's just, I don't want to play games with that guy.
Right.
Well, I want to play war games against that guy because he's usually a really good war gamer, but I don't want to role play with that guy.
And I'll admit, there is part of me that every now and then finds the concept of doing a difficult as hell, kick your ass dungeon as a, in some ways, I find that kind of interesting. But I would be more interested in doing that in a sort of if it was more of a board game type thing. If you're
Yeah.
playing, say, I don't know, Hero Quest or Warhammer Quest,
Or Super Dungeon Explorers, great for that kind of shit.
something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you have you have a character that you're doing with it, but it's a game, it's a one-off game, and you're etc. But on the other side of that is you can still have a lot of really cool role-playing experiences in an actual dungeon like that, but I personally find it to be a bit of a slog.
Yeah. It's fun every once in a while. It's a change of pace, but yeah, exactly. It quickly becomes tedious.
Yep. So, lastly, any particularly memorable dungeons that you can think of off the top of your head that you've been in?
Let me see here. There was the Dark Heresy game where I don't even remember why we're in these catacombs, but it was really important that we're in there.
Uh-huh.
And we're expecting to run into like cultists or anti-imperial insurgents or whatever. But we ran into these like eldritch horrors that weren't quite chaos demons and didn't really fit anything in the 40k lore, which made it all the scarier. So it was less of a dungeon and more of like a survival horror thing.
Interesting.
That one I remembered simply because it was like not what any of us were expecting.
Right.
And the Iron Kingdoms game with the Saturday crew, where we went in for, into the mine filled with the elemental infernals.
Oh, right, yeah.
More because so many epic cinematic moments happened in that. Including Word Statix's Warcaster headbutting a greater demon into oblivion.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. I mean, I yeah, that was fun. Also, watching you guys realizing exactly what some of these things can do.
You cut out there for a minute.
Sorry, did I? Okay. Also, watching how you guys were sort of like watching you guys reacting to these very surprised things that the elementals could pull off that you weren't expecting.
Yes.
The greater,
like the aforementioned greater demon, like backhanding my character across the friggin' dungeon.
Right. Or the greater fire elementals teleporting between the cinder clouds.
The between the bonfires, yes. It's like, oh, you son of a bitch.
I'm a jerk. I'm a jerk. I'm a jerk. Poor Lugnut.
Yeah, poor Lugnut.
He got kind of meltonated in that one, if I remember correctly.
He really got fucked up, yeah. You did not enjoy that one.
No. That poor Jack.
Poor Warjack. He wasn't even a Warjack. My poor Lieber Jack.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, memorable dungeons, most of the ones I can think of have been ones I've run. Because again, I run games more than I play. Oh God, what's a good example of one? There were a couple of good ones I think from the Shadowland campaign that I ran on stream with Nick, Roloti, Gav, Arclight, and those people. I mean, there's some truly amusing. There were some funny ones, and there were some that were just like that were actually fairly memorable. There was a fairly short one that was fairly puzzle intensive until the big final fight, where they ran into somebody they thought they'd killed off ages ago, and who had been brought back with new crazy weird powers. So it ended up in this fight they were not expecting. Yeah, the guy in question was an alchemist that that was running a drug ring that they killed off, and some of the other baddies who he's connected to had brought him back from the dead with these new crazy powers. And the big thing was he basically he didn't move around, technically move that much. So they were fighting him in this room where there were these three circles, and
Right.
he basically the way it worked was basically he created effectively a duplicate of himself in each of the other two circles that were in the room, and then every round he would ran like they could, if they blew up one of the duplicates, the duplicates were easy to take out. They were basically minions.
Right.
But every turn he would teleport. He would basically teleport to one of the random circles, and the other two would fill up with another duplicate.
Oh, that's irritating.
Yeah, and the duplicates could like do his attacks also. They were just minions, so they one hit they go down.
So you pop them if you hit them properly.
Right, but so it's this series of attacks. So they were constantly. So they were. It was basically they're fighting three mages throwing spells at them, but two of them would go down in one hit, but they'd refresh.
That's irritating.
Yeah,
that's really irritating.
It was a cool fight though. But yeah, it was. And there was a bunch of other puzzles in that dungeon and things. And as they were going on, the guy was talking. They're like, and I was saying, and the voice sounds familiar. And they're like, well, who does it sound like? I try to keep it the same sort of speaking the same way the guy spoke before.
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't given a particularly wonky accent or anything like that when they ran it for the first time. So there was no way for me to convey that. So basically, none of them really clued into that who it was ahead of time. But when they walked in, they're like, "Oh, you! Oh,
it's that fucker." Okay.
Well, they were like, "Oh, it's him." Okay, well, we totally kicked his ass last time. This won't be a problem. Why are there three of them? Why do his spells hurt so much more now?
Someone's cheating.
Yep.
Jerk.
It was definitely interesting. But yeah, I've had a few. I've also had. One of my other favorite dungeon tropes ends up being the fighting your way up a wizard's tower through like all his through guards at some parts and like his crazy weird magical experimental gribblies and such other levels of the thing, and magical traps here and there and such. I've always liked that conceptually.
Yeah. No, that is kind of cool.
Yeah. And I've also been in a few I've both played and been in a few games where like the players are investigating an abandoned space station in a sci-fi game, usually with weird sort of strange alien things that you're not expecting.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty standard thing, honestly.
Yep.
Is the spooky space station.
Yep.
Who doesn't love a spooky space station?
Usually the players when they're on it.
No, the players love it. The characters hate it.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, I think that's going to do it for talking about for dungeons for now. I think that covers most of it.
I think that's we've definitely spoken about the dungeons quite a bit.
So dragons.
Yes, dragons. I like dragons.
So dragons in their place in fiction and any favorites as characters. How to use them in campaigns, clever beasts, sentient dictators, some other way. So how best to use them in campaigns? Clever beasts, sentient dictators, or some other way? The answer to that is yes.
Yeah. No, doing a dragon is a little more than just a particularly bright predator. I mean, seriously, that's scary as it is.
Yeah.
It's a giant flying, fire-breathing or some form of elemental breathing predator that wants to eat you because, of course, it does.
And I mean, which is it's there. It's a big, powerful, tough monster that's clever.
Yep.
But is it like a full-on sapient schemer? But then you have like the sapient schemer dragon, and that's just a whole new level of scary.
Yes. And yeah, that is honestly kind of terrifying. The sapient schemer dragon, because now they're doing shit like Okay, so our mutual friend Chris has a story about like uh guest GMing for this group who had been like bragging about how they kill dragons all the time. So he's like, okay, I'll show you guys how a fucking dragon works. It's like I think it was a 3.5 D&D game.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked at the dragons. He decided, okay, blue dragon. This is what he's going to do. He's going to take the orc leader of the orcs that had been worshiping him, and he's going to polymorph him into a blue dragon for them to fight. Because the orcs worship the dragon, and now he is blessed his chosen with with holy draconic form. Go and smite my enemies. I'm gonna turn myself into this elf maiden and pretend to be your prisoner because it'll be funny. Oh look, they killed my minion, thinking he was a dragon. Oh well, I'm still the polymorph maiden. You better take me to safety. And proceeded to suicide kings two of the characters into killing one another. Murdering the paladin in his sleep not in his sleep by luring him away, and then the wizard finally caught on and just squishing the wizard because he didn't have any support.
Oh dear.
All without actually returning to draconic form.
Yeah. No, that is a classic.
That was very much Chris doing the gotcha thing to show them how like dragons can in fact be scary if run properly.
Right.
Without ever giving them anything that wasn't in the book.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I appreciate that. It's one of the things I find interesting about 3.5 Dragons is that all the crazy spellcasting shit they can do.
Yep.
But for me, part of what I really love, that is simultaneously interesting, and part of it also feels like I like that, but I also think it misses sort of, I love the idea of the fully sentient, clever, manipulative thing that isn't using magic, but is, it's like, okay, it's manipulative, it's smart, it's doing all this stuff, but it's also just a great big damn lizard that breathes fire.
Yes.
And it's never not going and it's never not going to be a dragon. But yeah. Had dragons in games where it's never not going to be a dragon, but its main threat isn't the fact that it's a giant death lizard. I mean, that's a big damn threat, but it's it's the resources it has and how smart it is and how it's because dragons collect treasure and have giant hordes. What if which means that they're possessed with it, but a smart dragon will start using some of that money, some of the hoard it's accumulated, to buy itself advantages to make sure it doesn't lose the rest of it. So it's been a long time since this. I don't remember who I was running this for. It was ages ago, but I did run a game with a dragon as one of the major villains, who had basically who through chicanery and wealth and often the fact that and then when need be trading on, yes, I'm also a dragon, had basically taken over a town, like a major, like a small country, and the local king was basically the dragon's puppet.
Nice.
And so he was effectively the king. And actually, the dragon was actually the king, but he had his puppet on the throne. And so and so it was interesting because the actual structure for it, the players discovered it was there was this evil king who had a dragon at his beck and call to use to smite his enemies as a last resort. And so they went in expecting, okay, he's got this dragon is this thing, and okay, fine, we'll have to deal with the dragon. I forget exactly. Oh God, this was like 15 years ago, so I don't remember all the details.
Right.
But they weren't expecting the dragon to be as clever as it was, and the other thing what they really weren't expecting was that the army was actually loyal to the dragon because he paid them well, and it also meant that if they were getting it over their heads and the dragon decided okay, they were expendable as far as the dragons because they're mortals, but they were still useful, so he wouldn't just throw them away. And if they were getting in trouble, it's like, yeah, well, fine, I'll come into the rescue. They knew that they had a dragon at their backs. Their real leader was a dragon who was at their backs if need be, and that's a big plus in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that helps with the morale.
Yeah.
And that's that's a really interesting take on the dragon, also. But one of my favorite portrayals of the dragon is actually in Iron Kingdoms, because I'm a giant Iron Kingdoms fanboy.
Right.
And that's the Eldritch Abomination.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what they are. They're effective in Iron Kingdoms. The dragons are effectively great old ones.
Yep.
They hang out in their little cubby holes, which your very presence warp and change the earth itself into new and terrifying forms. They the surrounding flora and fauna mutate into monstrous versions of themselves, and oh yeah, they can make shoggoths out of their blood.
Right.
And they are so much smarter than you and so much more powerful that they don't even have stats. They just win.
Right. Yeah, and it's definitely. I think it's a really interesting. It's a really interesting take on dragons.
Yeah. And I really like that idea. Also, the fact that the dragons aren't actually alive; their bodies are more just corporeal constructs for the spirit inside the stone at the core of them. And yeah, you can kill the construct. The stone will grow another one around it when it gets bored of being a rock. And if you try to split the rock, well, now you have two dragons.
Well done, Pip Pip.
Congratulations, you just made the problem worse. Oh, well, I guess we'll get rid of it by throwing it into a volcano. Great, now he's got a lot more energy to build a new construct out of. That's basically how dragons work in Iron Kingdom.
Yeah, they're kind of awful.
They're literally great old ones. You don't fuck with dragons.
Yeah. Oh boy. But the dragon, in classic D&D, they're wonderful. Sort of, one of the great things about dragons and Dungeons and Dragons is that because of the way dragons age and how they get more powerful as they get older, they're great sort of challenges you can throw at the parties at a party at different stages of the campaign as the party gets more and more powerful. And done properly, they'll be an interesting challenge each time. And somewhat of a different.
As they get older and gain more experience and powers and whatnot.
Right. Which I think is really neat.
Yeah, there's pretty much a dragon for each. There's an age of dragon for each tier.
Yeah, pretty much. I will say this. The thing, and I think that works. I'll say this. I think that actually works better in 4th ed than it did in 3rd. Largely because I think it works better in 4th ed than it did in 3rd.
Yes.
I
agree.
Largely due to the fact that 3rd ed dragons, after a certain point, it's a big scaly dragon, but what's scary about them is that it's a powerful wizard.
Yes. Because dragons and because wizards in 3.5 just they're how that's how you win.
But the problem isn't so much that wizards are really powerful. It's the problem is that it's a shame that what's scary about them is it's a wizard, not that it's a giant fucking fire breathing lizard.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of what makes dragons interesting that gets lost there, in my opinion.
There's a certain primal ofuckitude to a giant fire breathing lizard.
Yeah.
That gets lost when it's a mage that happens to be a giant fire-breathing wizard.
Right.
It's a fucking dinosaur that flies and breathes fire. That should make you shit yourself.
And giving dragons some magic's not a bad thing, but I don't think that should be the crux of why the dragon is scary.
I agree. It should be the fact that there should be a primal reaction at the base of that stupid part of your brain that goes, you should leave now.
Yeah. All right, so before
which
we
can be difficult to do in a, which is admittedly difficult to do in an RPG. People really have to be invested for it to work properly.
yes, I agree.
But you should try. There's no shame in trying.
Absolutely. Um, Out of curiosity, so the other thing that Darth Elmo asked was, are there any dragons in fiction that you can think of that as characters that are you particularly fond of or memorable?
Well, there's old Smog from The Hobbit.
Smaug is one of the most notable ones in my opinion.
Yeah, he's the archetypical dragon. He's a giant, arrogant, too smart for his own good, and far too puffed up on his own hubris. But kind of rightly, because, well, it's a giant fire-breathing goddamn dinosaur.
And is bordering on invulnerable.
Yes. Like it is not an unearned arrogance.
Right.
It's just, there happened to be some asshole with a magic arrow down in Lake Town.
And Smaug happened to be missing a scale.
Yeah. For the last time some asshole with a magic arrow shot him.
Yeah, so that was Smaug I adore. I'm trying to think of other pieces of fiction with a dragon as an actual character in them. And there's one that leaps to mind, but it's atypical. Well, actually, no, there are two I can think of, and they're very much not your typical dragon. There's a series of young adult novels by Patricia Rede called the Dealing with Dragons series.
I think I've heard of this, if not read one or two.
I know I loaned a bunch of them. I gave our friend Roach a copy of the first book for Christmas one year, and he ended up getting the rest of them because he adored the book.
Okay.
Or I think he did, or we got them in the library or something like that. The first one is called Talking to Dragons, and I love the conceit. It's about this character, this princess named Cimmerini, who is utterly fed up with being a traditional princess. So she's growing up. She pesters the castle's fencing master, teach her how to use a sword. And when that's banned, she goes to the castle wizard, teach her magic. And when that's banned, she does this. She goes through everybody at the castle learning all this different stuff. And eventually, she's going to be married off, and she's not at all interested in marrying the guy in question. So she just, fuck it, I'm leaving. And she gathers her stuff up and goes off, so one of the traditions in this sort of story, the universe of this, it turns out is ways to earn a prince's hand in marriage, rescuing them from some horrible fate, often from being captured by a dragon. And she runs into these dragons. Basically, she runs away from home. She doesn't want it. And so basically, she gets advice to go to this cave where there are three dragons. One of them named Kazul, who ends up, and basically she actually offers to be Kazul's captive princess, because it turns out dragons, having a princess is a thing, sort of a thing of stature.
Right.
And Cimmerini can cook. I can
totally see that.
And they become friends.
Cool.
And Cimmerini ends up becoming helping Kazul save the Dragon Kingdom from a horrible, insidious plot by these evil wizards. And it's a really cool series of stories. And Kazul and the dragons are fascinating characters. I mean, some of them are evil schemers, some of them are just loud and obnoxious. Kazul is this very introspective thinker who's actually really cool. And Cimmerini is one of the reason Kazul decides to take her as a taker. The other one of the dragons is this isn't proper. Princesses don't volunteer for this. And but Cimmerini Kazul asks Cimmerini what she can do, and Cimmerini's like, well, I can cook. And can you make cherries Jubilee? Well, yeah, awesome. I love cherries Jubilee.
Excellent. You are hired.
So she helps organize Kazul's treasure because it's her hoard's a giant pile, and so Cimmerini helps her organize it because it hasn't been organized in a long time because the last couple princesses Kazul had no head for it.
Right.
And that's the other thing Kazul loves about it, Cimmerini, is that Cimmerini's smart and organized and disciplined. She's like, Oh, thank God, you're a princess I can actually deal with, and I'm not a complete airhead. I love this. This is great. I haven't had one of those in a long, long time.
You're so much better at this than most princesses.
And this beautiful bit, like eventually, knights come to save her, and Simone basically keeps telling them, like, no, I don't want to be rescued.
Go away. No, I'm happy here. I like hanging out with this dragon. Me and this dragon, we're lizard bros. Well, sisses, but you know how it goes. You understand.
But I will say the series of the Dealing with Dragons series, their 4 books are fantastic, and I really recommend them. They're a lot of fun. The other one, she eventually ends up redirecting some of the princes, the knights, to rescue some of the other princesses. Who, and the way she convinces some of them is, yeah, right. Well, the other thing she points out to them is, well, the other princes have been captured by dragons longer. They have seniority, and the knights are like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Well then,
it's a fun series of books. I really recommend them. The other one that leaps to mind is another not very typical dragon. It's from a series of graphic novels, a very short one, unfortunately, short series, written by Robert Asprin of Myth Adventures fame. The title of the series is called Duncan and Mallory.
okay.
Duncan is a not particularly bright, not particularly brave, but he's a big, strong dude who's a competent swordsman. He's basically a warrior, but he's not particularly brave and not super smart. Who stumbles across this dragon, Mallory. Mallory is not a giant dragon. He's about 8 feet tall, usually bipedal, but he's a dragon still.
Right, he's still a dragon.
The thing about Mallory is Mallory's also not particularly. Mallory's smart, but is also not particularly brave, and But the thing about Mallory is Mallory's at heart a con artist.
Ah.
And a card shark. It turns out. So they actually have they like the first thing they end up doing together is they end up pulling the classic scenario. Dragon threatens a village. Duncan shows up the warrior to drive off the dragon, and they fake a fight. Driving out the dragon, Duncan gets rewarded, and they go off and split the money.
This is where they got the idea in Dragonheart, I see.
And there's a wonderful, but Mallory's also, as I said, a card player because they travel together. They don't always do this, and again, Mallory's not a giant dragon, so he can travel about normally, and not everyone is freaked out by him. In fact, most people in cities aren't at all. Amusingly, Mallory's actually on the run from his family because he didn't want to get into the family business. Being an accountant is so boring.
Yeah. Which is why he's got a good head for numbers.
Yes.
Which is why he plays cards.
And there's this wonderful scene where Mallory's playing poker with these two other this other con team, whose names I can't remember. It's this guy and this girl. And so they're playing, and Mallory's just destroying them. And the guy looks over at the girl, and whispers to teeth, "The dragon is cheating." She says, "How do you know?" "Because I'm cheating and he's still winning."
Awesome.
Oh my god! I think 3 of them in total. The first one is sort of introducing Duncan and Mallory and like the con artists. The second one, Mallory ends up winning a ranch in a poker game, not knowing it's a tarantula ranch, and Mallory has a phobia of spiders.
Of course he does.
It's hilarious. And the tarantulas the art for them is just fucking adorable. Because they're classic. Because this is all sort of a graphic novel, sort of cartoony thing. It's not quite the same.
Right.
It's not done by the Folios, the way the Myth Adventures graphic novels were.
Right.
But it's sort of similar ilk of somewhat comic, Western style sort of cartooning. And the tarantulas just have these giant bug eyes, and they're furry, and they're just like these little bundles of like 8-limbed furry things with giant eyes, and they're adorable. And like, everyone's like, "Why are you afraid of these things? They're tiny and adorable." And like,
legs and they're furry, and things shouldn't have fur.
right? And that's part of, well, Mallory's does have sort of fur on him, but
Okay.
he's got a sort of, almost has like a mane. It's the character design for Mallory's really cool, actually. Uh, but and it's like, and Doug's like, they're not even threatening, and like Mallory's like, and like, wow, he's an ugly little bugger, and like the ranch hands are like, no, don't do that. Oh no, they're very sensitive. And Mallory, Mallory scares and insults the tarantulas, and they get spooked and stampede, and Mallory gets stampeded by tarantulas, which doesn't physically injure Mallory.
The psychological scars will laugh like that. Laughed. I can't talk.
Last a lifetime.
Yes, thank you.
It's hard to find these graphic novels, but they're so worth finding if you can. They're really funny and a lot of fun.
The another unusual dragon. I'm going back to the Iron Kingdoms well again. That I enjoy reading about, even though he's kind of a dick and a coward, is Everblight.
Right.
Everblight is on the wee scale for Iron Kingdoms dragons. I mean, he's still a great old one, but
right.
And the dragons are all trying to kill each other and eat each other's stones, because it's how you get to be a bigger dragon. And he decides, you know what, this whole having a body thing, it's bullshit, and my body's not even that big to begin with. But I have figured out how to control my blight, which is the crazy mutating powers that dragons unconsciously have, and B, how to split off shards of my stone and still retain my consciousness and split it between the different shards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this big dumb Ogren shove my stone into his chest and use him as my vessel, because no one's going to suspect a giant mutant Ogren is actually a dragon. B, I'm going to corrupt and mutate this entire species of elves, because what's a little genocide when you're immortal and a dick. And C, I will choose the most powerful sorcerers amongst them and implant them with shards of my essence, so that they will become more powerful, and I can hop into their I can assume direct control when necessary.
Nice.
And he actually becomes something of a player in the Iron Kingdoms by doing this, completely under the other dragons' noses. Like, they know something's up, but they can't figure out how he's swinging this shit, or if it's even really him or just something else.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that.
And yeah, Everblight's a giant dick, even by dragon standards. He's incredibly arrogant, even by Iron Kingdom's dragon standards, and a complete and utter coward.
That's great.
Like, he will just go, right, fuck it. This entire generation of mutantness, fuck them, let them die. I'm not losing this one shard stuck in this one warlock. And at one point he got the bright idea to eat a god. One of the elven gods was trapped in a block of ice, so he decided he was going to eat it. But yeah, that didn't happen, thankfully for everyone involved. Because Everblight's just the kind of guy to gain the power of a god, think that makes him awesome, and end up fucking up everything for everyone, including himself. But I find him really kind of endlessly fascinating in the, like, what a stinker kind of way.
Yep. That's actually
I never played the Legion of Everblight in War Machine because, well, there are too many filthy elves, even if they are covered in spikes and scales.
That was the one Hordes faction. There was one of the two Hordes factions that you gave any thought to actually playing.
Yeah. Like, the Legion's really cool. It's just my hatred of elves overrides my love of body horror. So
right. For me, honestly,
a lot of body horror in the Legion of Everblight.
Yeah, for me, it was the thing I was most interested in with them was their war beasts, because the dragon spawn are fucking amazing looking models.
They are really cool looking. they're absolutely unique. Like, well, I won't say absolutely unique. They draw they draw a bit from Giger because everyone does at some point.
Yep.
But they're big six-limbed eyeless monstrosities covered in like plates and claws.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. All right. I think we could talk on a bit more about dragons, but I think we can wrap that there.
Oh, easily. Dragons are awesome. Who doesn't like dragons?
All right. I was going to go to questions. We've run our normal sort of course at this point, sort of time wise. If depending on how long we go, I was going to sort of we got a question from Jonathan from the Bilby guy, but it's a long sort of running question that would take a long time to read through, and I'll save that for next time, I think.
All right, sounds good.
But his PS in it is amused me, and I want to read the PS he has on the end of it. I wanted to read because it amuses me.
Okay.
In which he says, P.S. It's always funny to listen to Eric describe his characters of past games like he does in this episode. This is from last episode. Since my initial exposure to his playing was the super heroic and goodwill Dr. Arcane. I even think the Slayers and Iron Kingdoms games, he didn't play his characters anything as chaotic as what he tends to describe in his stories. Yeah.
I've dialed things back quite a bit. I've run my course for in the chaos-inducing, campaign derailing ways.
Oh God. Well, Dr. Arcane was a somewhat atypical character for you, but
no, he was completely atypical. It was my first time playing an actual like superhero without like drawing in any dark sidey stuff.
Right.
Like, straight up good guy.
You were intentionally doing that.
Actually good guy.
And it was great.
Yes. Dr. Arcane was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, we do try to save time at the end of each episode for questions. Didn't get any this week that we can cover we have time to cover. So we'll save that for next time. But if you do have questions you'd like us to answer in the show, or if you've got show topic suggestions for us, or constructive criticism, any of those three, we love them all. Dear God, we love them all. Please do send them to us. Our email address is surlygrognards@yahoo.com, surlygrognards@yahoo.com, or you can post them on the comment section of the video on YouTube. The recordings just go up on YouTube as soon after recording as I can do it. We record the show live on Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on hitbox.tv/mecha-gm. Not every Monday night, but we record that. Monday nights are the nights we record. And if you keep an eye on my Twitter handle is @mechagm. You'll know I tweet out when we're going live, so you can keep an eye on that, and you'll know when we're going live and such. But that's really about it, I think. I think that's the entire.
That's the whole shtick there.
Yep, excellent. That's the spiel. Great. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We hope you guys had fun. Thanks for hanging out with us in the live audience on Hitbox. We love you guys. Thanks for being here. And we'll be back with Grognards. I don't know when. I don't know what show we're recording next week.
We'll find out.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll be recording either Grognards or the 3-Minute Anime Podcast. Depends on whether we do finish up the show we're currently watching this weekend. I don't know if we will because it's Thanksgiving weekend for those of us in the States, and that's 2/3 of the 3-Minute Anime Podcast. So,
yeah.
Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye.